Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
I turned 42 on a Tuesday. Not that it mattered to anyone in my family, because like clockwork, they forgot again. Not a phone call. Not a message. Not even one of those half-assed Facebook, "Happy birthday, sweetie," posts my mom usually fired off while sitting on the toilet or during her fourth glass of box wine. I didn't cry this year, though. Maybe because by now, 5 years into this pattern of being erased, I've run out of fresh tears to squeeze out of the same old wound. So I did what I always do. I picked up pad thai from the place on Miller Street, the one that knows my order without asking, and I sat on my old beige couch with the saga cushion, watching reruns of Murder, She Wrote like an old widow who doesn't know what day it is. I even bought my own slice of cake from the grocery store. Red velvet. Just one slice. One candle. I lit it, sat in the dark, and let the wax drip down until it burned my fingertip. Then I made a wish I didn't believe in and blew it out. Silence. Just me and the smell of scorched sugar. You'd think by the time a woman hits her 40s, she wouldn't care anymore. But you'd be wrong. Because no matter how old you get, you still want your damn parents to remember you exist. You still want to be seen. Especially when they manage to remember every stupid detail about your brother's life like it's tattooed on the inside of their eyelids. I tried not to open Instagram the next morning. I told myself I didn't care, that I wasn't looking for anything. But curiosity is a filthy little liar, and I gave in. And there it was, the post. The post. A big, bright, happy birthday tribute to Eli, my younger brother. His birthday had been 2 days before mine. Not a milestone. Not a special year. Just your average, 39-year-old grown-ass man with a receding hairline and a god complex. And yet, somehow, he still got the public love letter I never did. Photo after photo of him as a kid, smiling with his dumb missing teeth and Little League medals. My dad holding him up on his shoulders. My mom brushing his baby curls. Pictures of him in a tux at prom, of him graduating, of him holding his first baby. All those curated snapshots, like a shrine to the golden boy of the Carter family. But what really did me in wasn't the pictures. It was the caption. Happy birthday to the best kid we could have asked for. From the moment you were born, you've made us proud every single day. I read that line 4 times before it sunk in. Best kid. Not one of the best. Not we're so lucky to have 2 amazing children. Just the best. Eli. Period. End of sentence. I could almost hear my mother's voice saying it, too, that soft syrupy tone she uses when she's talking to other people, not the clipped, cold version she reserved for me growing up. The one that always made me feel like I was applying for a job I was never going to get. And just like that, it all came rushing back. The year I broke my arm falling off the balance beam at a gymnastics meet, and they left early because Eli had a fever. The time I got second place at the regional science fair, and they missed the award ceremony because his baseball team made the playoffs. Every Christmas where his gift was thoughtful and mine was just there. A clearance sweater with the tags still attached. A generic candle set, shoved in a gift bag from the dollar store. They called me dramatic when I brought it up. Said I was too sensitive, that I read into things too much. But now here was the proof in digital ink, for the whole damn world to see. They'd made their choice a long time ago. And somehow, I'd kept waiting for them to change. That was the part that stung the worst, not their forgetfulness, not even the post. But the stupid, embarrassing hope I'd still clung to. That maybe this year they'd surprise me. That maybe they'd remember. That maybe there was still a part of me worth celebrating. And now, staring at my brother's perfect Instagram tribute with 500 likes and 3 dozen comments saying things like, "You raised a great one," and "such a beautiful family," I realized how pathetic that hope really was. I felt something shift in my chest. Not rage. Not sadness. Just clarity. A calm, creeping kind of resolve. Like standing outside during the first cold wind of fall and knowing summer is truly over. I didn't comment on the post. Didn't text them. Didn't cry. I just closed the app, set my phone down on the coffee table, and stared out the window at the gray sky thick with the threat of rain. That was the moment I knew. They weren't going to change. But I could. There's something strangely holy about deleting people who once raised you, something that feels like both an act of grief and defiance, like lowering a casket into the earth while lighting a cigarette and whistling a song no one else remembers. That morning, still raw from the post I shouldn't have looked at, I sat with my coffee cooling on the windowsill and started clearing the digital rot. Facebook was first, the easiest target. One click to unfollow, another to block, and then they were gone, their curated version of reality sealed off like a room you lock behind you after finding mold on the walls. My mom's overly filtered selfies with her book club wine crew, gone. My dad's half-baked political rants with Eli chiming in to agree, gone. Eli's constant feed of self-congratulations, every open house, every golf game, every Father's Day post that somehow still managed to include himself, all gone. Instagram came next. That shiny, bullshit-perfect grid with all their vacations and brunches and backyard cookouts I was never invited to. You would think I was a neighbor they once waved to, not a daughter who once curled into their laps and begged to be seen. Block, block, block. I even sent Eli's wife, who, let's be honest, is just a high-functioning robot in athleisure, a screenshot of the birthday post with one word typed underneath. Congrats. That was all. No follow-up, no explanation. Let her interpret it however she wanted. She probably showed him 5 seconds later, wrinkling her surgically smoothed forehead like I'd cursed them in Latin. Then came the phone. Contacts purged. Voicemail deleted. Text chains wiped out like old receipts. I didn't want the temptation. I didn't want the ghost of them buzzing in my pocket every few weeks pretending we were okay, asking if I wanted to come over for Christmas this year, as if the last decade of passive neglect never happened. And when the blocking was done, when I'd silenced every avenue they might use to reach me, I sat back on the couch and waited for the emptiness to feel like regret. But it didn't. It felt like peace. Like breathing without a corset on. Trina came over that night, armed with a bottle of Pinot and a grocery store cake she'd scribbled Happy Fuck M Day on with a shaky hand and a butter knife. We laughed until I snorted wine out of my nose, and she high-fived me so hard I thought I'd lose a finger. "'Bout damn time," she said, raising her glass. "You don't owe anyone a seat at your table just because they changed your diapers." She was right. And it felt good to finally listen. We hadn't spoken in over 16 years. No, wait. Sorry, 6 years. What's the difference, right? That mistake actually made me laugh out loud when I caught it, because the truth is, it might as well have been 16. That's how long it felt like I'd been screaming into a void, trying to get people who were supposed to love me to remember that I had a birthday too. That I was a person too. That I didn't just exist in the negative spaces between Eli's milestones. The silence that followed my purge was almost suspicious. I half expected a call, a knock, maybe even a passive-aggressive Facebook post from my mom quoting some Bible verse about forgiveness and family. But for 2 full days, nothing. Not a peep. It was like they didn't even notice. Until they did. The knock came on a Thursday afternoon while I was folding laundry and listening to a podcast about cults. I wasn't expecting anyone, and the moment I peeked through the blinds and saw the beat-up Subaru in my driveway, my stomach dropped. It was my dad. Standing on my front porch with a potted plant in his hand like that somehow made him less of a stranger. He looked older than I remembered, his shoulders stooped a little more, his eyes a little foggier, but his face was the same. That fixed expression that always walked the line between confusion and disappointment. Like he was constantly trying to figure out how I'd turned into something he hadn't planned for. He knocked again. Then again. Then said my name once, quiet, like a question. I didn't answer. I stood behind the curtain and watched him fidget with the plant, then set it down by my welcome mat like an offering. When he finally spoke, it was in that same rehearsed, weary tone he used when I was a teenager, and he didn't want to deal with my feelings. You're overreacting, he said, to no one and everyone. We didn't mean anything by it. Why do you always twist things? I didn't open the door. I didn't speak. I didn't move until I saw his car reverse out of the driveway and disappear down the street. Later that night, the text started. Not from him. From Eli. What the hell is wrong with you? You embarrassed mom. You need to grow up. It was funny, in a bitter kind of way, how fast the narrative shifted. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't added them online or sent a dramatic email. I had just walked away, quietly, but somehow that was enough to set off alarms, to make them squirm, to make them notice. And for the first time, that felt like power. Real power. The kind you don't beg for or cry for or earn through good behavior. The kind you claim. I read Eli's last message again and smiled, not because it was cruel, but because I knew exactly what came next. It was already too late. The phone calls didn't come to me, which wasn't surprising because when people like my family get nervous, they rarely approach the source of their discomfort. They go around it, sideways and slippery like eels avoiding the hook. It started with Trina, who called me 2 mornings after my dad's doorstep stunt, still laughing into the phone like she couldn't believe the audacity. Guess who just tried to sweet-talk me at 8 a.m., she said, putting her coffee down with a clink. Your mom, Joe. She called me from her salon chair, talking about how concerned she was. Said you'd always been a little, moody. Trina didn't let her finish, of course. She told her flat out that if she wanted to know how I was doing, she should try talking to me like a grown woman instead of hiding behind other people. My mom hung up not long after that, probably annoyed that Trina didn't play the soft-hearted sidekick who would help ease her back into my good graces. That was always my mom's style, send someone else in first to test the temperature, to make sure the waters weren't too choppy for her carefully lacquered self-image. The next day, I got an email from my old job. Not an invitation, not a thinking of you, but a quick note from the office manager saying that Marlene Carter had called the front desk asking if they knew how I was doing, and if I had maybe mentioned anything unusual lately. The implication was clear. If I wasn't answering their messages, if I wasn't smiling and posting and pretending like everything was okay, I must have snapped. Or worse, I was making them look bad. That was the real problem. My silence wasn't just confusing, it was inconvenient. That night, I checked my inbox, and there it was, a long, winding email from my mother, the subject line as thin and insincere as the rest of the message. Let's talk when you're ready. It started the way all her apologies did, half in the dark, half in the mirror. She said parenting was the hardest job in the world, which, for her, always translated into, so don't you dare judge me. She mentioned how I had always been a bit distant, how I needed more than your brother, emotionally, and how she and my dad had tried their best, as if best efforts were some magic eraser for decades of neglect. What caught my eye, though, wasn't the excuses. It was how she framed my silence. She called it cruel, confusing, and dramatic. Not once did she say it was deserved. Not once did she admit to forgetting my birthday 5 years running or calling Eli the best kid in a public post while pretending I was part of some background scenery in our family photos. And that's when it hit me. They weren't panicking because they missed me. They were panicking because my absence broke their story. They needed me quiet, grateful, predictable. The good daughter who didn't cause scenes or hold grudges. The one who showed up on holidays with a nice dessert and a fake laugh and no needs of her own. Without that version of me, their narrative didn't hold. Suddenly, they looked like the people they really were: selective, selfish, and utterly unwilling to look in the mirror unless the lighting was flattering. I wrote a reply that night in the Notes app on my phone, not because I planned to send it, but because I needed to get the weight of those words out of my chest. I told her everything. The science fairs, the canceled birthdays, the way it felt to be called too sensitive when I cried after Eli called me fat in front of his friends. I told her how I'd sat in my room that night with headphones on, trying to drown out the sound of their laughter downstairs. And I ended the message with the only truth that mattered anymore. You didn't raise a stranger. You raised a version of me you could ignore. But I didn't send it, because there was no point. Instead, I opened Facebook, the same platform where she had posted the tribute that shattered the last tiny bit of hope inside me, and I posted my own version of a tribute. Not for my birthday. Not even for myself, really. But for the girl I used to be. I uploaded photos they probably thought I'd forgotten about, ones they hoped would never resurface. The one where I had a black eye in 7th grade after Eli shoved me into the bookshelf and said it was my fault for being in his way. The one where I'm standing on a stage at the school talent show, holding a microphone with tears on my cheeks because they never showed up. A picture of me in a hospital bed after a panic attack in college, alone, no visitors, just a plastic bracelet and a vending machine granola bar for dinner. And beneath those photos, I wrote the caption that had been sitting in my gut for years, rotting into something sharp. Here's to the invisible child. She grew up. The post went up at 6:45 in the evening. By 8:15, I got a notification that Marlene Carter had deleted her account. Not deactivated. Deleted. And somehow, that was better than any reply. There's a certain kind of memory that doesn't age, that stays sealed in amber no matter how many years pass, a flicker you can feel before you even see it. The smell of damp leaves, the sound of wind rattling through dry branches, the ache in your stomach from holding in too much for too long, that's what came back first. I hadn't thought about that day in years, at least not consciously, but something about everything unraveling had started pulling loose old threads I thought I'd buried deep enough not to trip over anymore. I was 12. It was March. The sky was that grayish-white that never gives you sunlight or rain, just a long, quiet stretch of nothing. And I had just found out, the night before, that my parents wouldn't be coming to the science fair. They told me in passing, like it was a casual scheduling conflict, not a decision. My mom had half a Diet Coke in one hand and a cigarette in the other, even though she said she'd quit, and she just kind of tossed it out while flipping channels. Eli's got a playoff game that night, she said, barely looking at me. You'll be fine, right? Maybe Mr. Abrams can take a picture. I remember the sound the TV remote made when it hit the coffee table, the sharp plastic clack that snapped in my chest. I remember nodding even though I wanted to scream. I remember going to my room and sitting in the dark for almost an hour, not because I wanted to be dramatic, but because I didn't know what else to do with the feeling of being discarded again. The next day, I didn't go to the science fair either. Instead, I took my display board, the one with the neatly glued photos of plant cells and a title in glitter marker that said "Growth happens in the dark," and left it in the hallway by my locker. I told the school nurse I had a headache, slipped out the side door by the music room, and walked straight into the woods behind the soccer field. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have a jacket. But I sat there for 6 hours, curled against the base of a tree with my knees pulled to my chest, crying so hard my throat went raw. I didn't run away because I wanted attention. I ran away because I wanted to disappear without it being anyone's fault but mine. They found me just before dark, after the school finally called home and realized I wasn't in the nurse's office. My parents didn't scream. They didn't cry. They just looked irritated, like I'd embarrassed them at a dinner party. They called it a meltdown. My mom told the guidance counselor I was in a phase. My dad said I was too emotional, just like her side of the family. No one asked why I left. No one asked if I was okay. I got grounded for a week and told to write an apology letter to the science fair coordinator. It wasn't until this week, after the Facebook post, after the digital purge, after the plant on my porch, that the memory came back fully formed, like it had just been waiting for the right crack to crawl through. I started going through old phones I'd tossed in drawers over the years, half-charged relics with broken screens and outdated software. I wasn't sure what I was looking for exactly, maybe pictures, maybe messages, but I think part of me just needed confirmation that I hadn't imagined everything, that I hadn't made my whole life one long misinterpretation. That's when I found the voicemail. It was tucked away in the saved folder of a phone I hadn't powered on since 2014, a voicemail I hadn't remembered saving until I heard her voice. My grandmother, my mom's mother, who died when I was 25, long before I had the courage to speak about any of this out loud. She had left it after we'd had lunch one day, just the two of us, a rare thing because my mother never liked me spending time alone with her. She fills your head, she used to say, like insight was poison. But that day had been peaceful. Just sandwiches and tea and my grandmother's long, wise silences that made you feel seen even when you weren't speaking. I played the voicemail 3 times before I could really absorb it. "I know it's hard, sweetie," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Your mama didn't want a daughter, not really. Just a shadow of herself. Someone quiet, someone soft. You came out with a storm in your chest, and she didn't know what to do with that. It's not your fault, baby. Some people only know how to love reflections of themselves." I don't remember crying, not right away. I remember sitting on the floor with the phone pressed to my chest like it could warm the parts of me that had been cold for years. I remember the strange peace that came with hearing someone say it out loud, not just that I wasn't crazy, but that I'd been right all along, that I wasn't difficult or broken or dramatic. I was just born to a woman who wanted a version of herself that I never could become. That night, I changed my alarm clock sound to that voicemail. Every morning since, I've woken up to those words. Not because I need the reminder, but because I deserve to start the day hearing the truth for once. And maybe because the sound of someone finally understanding me, even if it's a ghost, is better than silence. Time didn't stop after the voicemail, but it shifted. Like something big had rolled off my chest, and now the world moved a little differently around me. Quieter, but clearer. The anger I used to wake up with tight in my jaw, pulsing in my throat, was still there, sure, but it didn't control me anymore. I wasn't stewing in it. I wasn't building arguments in the shower or pacing through imaginary confrontations in my living room. I had reached a point I never thought I'd get to. I simply didn't care what they thought anymore. I didn't respond to the texts from Eli. I didn't acknowledge the deleted Facebook accounts or the fact that my cousin Denise messaged me saying, "I think you should talk to your mom, she's not doing well." That phrase made me laugh, actually. Not doing well. What did that mean? That she cried into her wine glass when nobody clapped back on her latest opinion about gluten-free diets? That someone at her church asked if she had more than one child? That the mask slipped and now she had to explain the cracks? Let her explain. I spent more time with Trina. We cooked together. We sat on her porch with our legs up on the railing, wine in hand, talking about nothing and everything. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since my 20s when I used to hide canvases under my bed because my mom once said, "Art is a hobby, not a personality." I painted messy, vibrant things that didn't make sense to anyone but me. It felt like reclaiming the space she used to take up in my head. And I started dating. Not seriously, not romantically, not with any long-term dreams in mind, but just enough to remember what it felt like to be looked at with curiosity instead of criticism. Just enough to remind myself that I could be interesting to someone who didn't already have a story written about me in their head. Eli tried again, of course. He sent a voice message this time. His voice always had that entitled calm to it, like he was narrating someone else's story, and all the bad parts were never his fault. "You really gonna keep holding this against us?" he said. "You know Mom's not well." As if the problem was me keeping score, not them refusing to ever play fair. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I deleted it halfway through and blocked his number again. Then came the letter. No return address, but I knew the handwriting immediately, my mother's. Slanted, neat, slightly paranoid, like she was trying to make each word behave. It arrived on a Thursday, sandwiched between junk mail and a takeout flyer, just sitting there in the mailbox like it was any other envelope. I held it for a long time without opening it. Walked it back into the kitchen. Sat it on the counter. Stared at it while I washed dishes. I could have opened it. Could have read the same recycled sentences I'd heard before. "We tried our best. You misunderstood. We love you even if we didn't say it the right way. I could have let her voice into my house again, even if only in ink. But I didn't want her in my head anymore. I went into the backyard, lit the grill I never used, and tossed the envelope in. It curled like a dry leaf, blackened at the edges, then burst into a tight little flame that made me feel something like relief. I stood there watching the paper disintegrate, letting the heat touch my skin, thinking about all the times I wanted warmth and got cold silence instead. Trina came over an hour later and saw the ashes in the grill. "That the letter?" she asked. "Yep," I said, sipping from my drink. "Didn't even open it." She nodded like she understood, which of course she did. "You sure?" she asked. "Not even a little," I said. "But I don't need to be." Somewhere deep down, I think I'd always been waiting for a moment like that, not a final confrontation, not a big showdown where everyone suddenly saw the light, but a quiet, unremarkable choice where I got to say, "This far, no further." Because sometimes healing doesn't come with applause or forgiveness. Sometimes it's a letter you never read burning in a grill on a Thursday afternoon. Was it petty? Maybe. Was it cold? Possibly. But it was mine. And for once, that was enough. I still hear people, even friends, say things like, "But they're your family," as if that alone should be enough to excuse everything. And to that, all I ever say now is, "So what? So what if we share blood?" Blood doesn't mean love. It doesn't mean respect. It doesn't mean I owe them the version of myself that quietly swallowed every insult and smiled through every neglectful silence. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm free. And if they ever ask why I cut them off, why I disappeared without a goodbye, I hope someone tells them, because eventually, even invisible children learn how to disappear on purpose. And this time, they don't come back.